So I've been thinking a lot about this since you kind of asked, which one I wanted to talk about. And I just want to begin by saying that so the things that I'm going to talk about in my school, though, as you're all asking questions or saying things that you're concerned about, I'm hearing a lot of things that are our concerns as well. So I'm glad to hear them. But obviously, each of our schools have its own culture and challenges and things. So I'll just share kind of what my thinking of where we are now, and then some ideas some things that we do. And hopefully that helps you. And I'd love to talk about it with you and hear what maybe you have some suggestions for us. Um, when I first became part of this department about 5 years, well, 7 years ago, but really 6 years ago, I started working in the formation part of the program. It's a 5-year formation program, and in the 5th year, as someone in Ignatius Chicago mentioned, the 5th year group was expected to either do the full spiritual exercises, the 19th annotation, or be in spiritual direction. And it was that came from VP of Mission, so he would attend the formation meetings and kind of said, like, hey, this is an opportunity, it's free, you need to do this, this is something we want you to do. So we certainly had a lot of people participating in the spiritual exercises and spiritual direction, but I found myself really resistant for two reasons, which you have mentioned. One, the decision to pray the spiritual exercises is a call from God, not from the head of mission. Although I don't think that the head of mission is not necessarily working for God, I think that this needs to be coming from a much deeper place than a requirement. And I also, number two, think spiritual direction is a mutual relationship, also not to be forced upon any person. And I found, especially with folks entering into spiritual direction that had no clue what it was about or really didn't want to do it, that it was not a great experience. They felt forced, they were resistant. I felt like I was trying to tap dance around and help them into something that they did not want to be part of. And it went against everything that I believed as a spiritual director and in my training. So when I became head of the department, we decided to change that. And so my deep belief is that the experience is invitational, and that the most important invitation is the divine urge from God, that God's offer of God's self. And so my role and the role of the folks in my department is to be listening and available for places that when a person might be listening to and wanting to respond to that call. So, well, I'll say a little bit more about that. Over the past 2 years with COVID, I've noticed a large drop off. So some of you said that you had a large increase because that people felt comfortable going on Zoom. I had the opposite experience. I think we had major burnout mentally, in some cases physically. I'm certainly seeing that in some things that are going on now, kind of post-COVID. Folks are having some physical issues going on, and definitely spiritually. There's a large amount of burnout. So while this has been tough for us, obviously, and all of you, I think we decided as a department, and most of us are spiritual directors here, so that's the lens that we're looking at, is that we would find as many ways as we could to engage in just the practice of presence. So we decided to look for low effort, and by low effort, I mean on the space, like the community did not need to make much of an effort, not us. So low effort ways that we could remain available to everyone without asking too much more of them because they just couldn't do it. In the beginning, we tried online book clubs. We used Henry Nouwen's Life of the Beloved. We tried morning prayer groups. We tried online retreats. We tried to put everything out there to faculty and staff, and the parents and alumni were still responding to that, and they were still interested in it, but we had no buy-in from faculty and staff. They didn't have the time. They were overwhelmed with the Zoom. The last thing they wanted to do was one more Zoom program. They were like done. So in order to make ourselves more visible, we did a few things. And this is besides formation, which, to be frank, now last year we kind of went through a full year of formation, but the 2 years before, every time we turned around, they were changing our schedule. Either we were hybrid or we were in person or we were home. So we never got a great handle on formation for about 2 years of consistent meeting. Now that has changed, and this year is much better, and we're actually running our full program, which we're really excited about. But we did a few things. So beginning of the year, which I'm sure you all do, I did a beginning of the year email, which is just an invite. We're here. We're interested in talking to you about the spiritual exercises or spiritual direction or any of your faith question needs. We're here just for a quick drop in. We're here to just meet you where you are. So we're not like saying you need to be part of the 19th, but we're offering it as something that if you have a question and you want to be part of it. We also started a weekly email that we call Contemplatio, and it goes out every Monday morning if I'm on top of things or my computer's not blowing up, which goes out every Monday morning. And what it is, and Paul, who's my colleague on here, puts together a piece of art, a really beautiful quote from a spiritual writer centering around the spiritual exercises. And he follows in the very broadest sense over the year the themes of the spiritual exercises. So we begin with the preface. We begin with the year, week 1, week 2, and we kind of follow it along. And so they follow the themes, but we are not giving the spiritual exercise. We're just kind of talking about the themes. So there's a piece of art, a quote, and then a kind of a thought for prayer connected to the quote. And we use Canva. So we make it kind of this scrolling thing, and I send out a link and people can connect to it. And I send this out I kind of write a little introduction to it each week, my thoughts about the quote, maybe what it's stirring in me and what they might be interested in. Now we have no way of knowing how many people read this. And so sometimes we'll say, well, hey, we still just like doing it. So we'll just keep sending it out because it's kind of cool. And we love digging around and stuff. But I do hear from a number of variety of people each week to know that people are reading it. Because somebody that I've never even heard of before will say, oh, well, this week's really struck me. So I know that they've been reading it. We also began a series called Lenten Reflections, which goes out every day of Lent, and it's a reflection on the gospel that day by teachers, faculty, staff, students, Jesuits, parents, alumni, anybody kind of connected to the school. And we'll be starting like talking to people as soon right after Thanksgiving, getting like that organized. And what we do is we have them, they read the gospel. We give them very specific instructions about what the reflection should look like. We give them examples, we give them what we want. And then we connect with them over the time up until it's due, seeing if they need help, kind of answering questions, and also, getting to know them. So it's a great way for us to kind of intersect with a lot of different people that we wouldn't normally intersect with, because I'm not sure how it is in your school, but this place gets very siloed very quickly by department or by busyness. So, once things get cooking at school, we might not see people because they are very, very busy, as I'm sure they are in your school. So this way we kind of break through that. We get to talk to them, and then this goes out to over 800 people. We allow, like, everybody at school gets it, but then besides that, we offer it to parents, and then they can just sign up for it and receive it. So we've increased it. There's probably, I would say, not including our school, there's probably over 1,000 people that get this. So, and it increases each year. So it's pretty cool, but it's also a great way for us to connect to the community. We also been meeting with, we go to faculty meetings when they're relevant to spirituality, or there's something that we might be able to just be part of. We go to Mom's Club, Father's Club, pretty much anybody that will have us, we go and we talk to them, and we just try to be present in the community. So sometimes we'll talk about what we do, but other times we're just present. So Paul's like very present with the Father's Club. He goes and meets with them. They want to put a a spirituality night and they say, well, hey, can you give us some ideas? And so he's been very helpful in just doing that. So he's not talking about our programs at all, although he will, like when he gets a chance to speak, but he's just being present to them and like sharing what we do, but also helping them promote their spirituality in a way that they want to. On December 8th, they're having a night where fathers and sons and alumni, there'll be 3 witness talks centered around the theme, men for others. And so it's male oriented, but they'll all be there and listen to a talk, and then they'll have some face sharing and then come back and do some prayer. So Paul is kind of being an aid in that. We've also been meeting with a faculty group surrounding professional development to see where our work and what they're trying to do. They're running a program now that's doing research on how the Ignatian pedagogical paradigm, which is the how they teach in the classroom, how we might intersect with that, with the spiritual exercises in Ignatian spirituality, because obviously the IPP comes from that. But since I'm not really in the educational world, it's a great place for me to understand that more, and then for them to be able to see where they can intersect the spirituality and make it more part of the culture of the school, as not just your 5 years of formation, but as something that goes beyond that. So that is still kind of very new and in the works, but that one's something I'm really excited about because they're really interested in working with us. Beyond all of that, we just try to be as invitational as possible to all of our encounters. We involve ourselves in the women's club, men's club. There's a men's basketball thing. We do Kairos. A couple of us are involved in that, so we get to know teachers that way. And so we're just trying to be out there. Now, I'm lucky because I have 2 spiritual directors beside myself that work here and an administrative assistant. So I have some people to do that. So it's not just on me. If it was just me, that would be an entirely different ball of wax. So I know I'm very aware that I'm lucky in that way. I will say that I've seen an increase in people coming and talking about the 19th, and some of them are doing it. Not the numbers I saw before, but I also think that what I saw before was remnants of the old formation where it was a requirement, and which felt it felt forced. It felt like people were being told they needed to do it, and I'm just really happy that that's not where we are. We're also paying really close attention to what's going on in formation. And I mean by collecting data. And what we do is at the end of each formation, we ask them to fill out a card, and we might say, what is a takeaway that you are taking from this? And we're doing it for a bunch of different reasons. One, for this kind of professional development that we're going to be integrating, but also for our own spiritual director heart, is to see what's the movement of the spirit in what we're presenting. Or do we see people asking bigger questions and wondering about where God's moving in their lives? And so, is our formation giving them the place to ask that question? Because that's the question that starts leading them towards, well, how do I make this something even deeper and more explicit? So I have a few more people doing 19th, and we have a lot of people doing spiritual direction. Some of it is ongoing, and some of it is like kind of drop in, starting a conversation and then saying, well, I'll come back to you, and we just leave the door wide open for that. I will say that we used to be really worried about the numbers. That was a question I would get from my director, who I direct reported to, is like, how many people are doing this? And I'd be like, oh my gosh, not enough, or it's less than last year. And I think maybe the gift, if there's a gift to be said from COVID, is that we feel that folks coming to find us are really coming from a space of really seeking out a deeper relationship with God and Jesus, and that some really big questions are out there about life and the world, and they see us as a place at least to come and begin that conversation. So we used to use the number of people doing the 19th as a measure. We don't anymore, which is actually for me a huge relief. You know, I was talking with Paul about this earlier, and while the numbers aren't there, what I feel is that it doesn't matter because we're still doing the work, as Ignatius said, of saving souls. And um, I have no, as you all know from being in the world of spiritual direction, like I don't know what happens after they leave. I can't see that. It's not for me to know. That's not my role. My role is just to give them the space to explore that relationship. So I think maybe that all worried about how many to have was more in my head and certainly my ego than anything else. So I guess in conclusion, and then I would love to hear from you, how do we get people to do the 19th? And Paul and I were just talking about this. I'm like, we don't. We just kind of focus on relationship. And Ignatian spirituality is the grounding for everything we do. It's the grounding for formation. Obviously, it's the grounding for the retreats we do. It's the grounding for every communication we have. It's the lens that we use in our conversations. And so if that way of being is attractive to someone, then that's what brings them to seek that out. So I hope some of that either helps or gives questions or suggestions for us because we would love to hear them. So thank you for listening.